Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Eric Hines with the Denver North Star and the GES Gazette. We are just setting up right now for a debate between the District 9 candidates, and we'll be live with you shortly. You're good to go. You're live. Yeah.
Okay, we're live. Hello, welcome. I'm Jeff Papiel with Geotech Environmental Equipment. We're the host location for tonight, so I just thank David for allowing me to say hello to everybody here in the community. Just wanted to briefly point out a couple things. Geotech's a small manufacturing company here in Denver. We make stuff, and we do hire and employ people in all kinds of positions. Luann in the back is there. We do have some information for jobs and opportunities here at Geotech, and we laid out some snacks and drinks, so as we get through the evening, feel free to hang out afterwards, grab a snack, have a chance to hang out and talk to the folks there in the neighborhood. Also point out, Geotech is also a member of and primary host location for the Denver North Business Association meetings. And one of the things that we're really trying to focus on in the business association is how do the businesses and community members work together on common issues. And we want to be good businesses in the area that are hiring people from the area and contributing to the community. So we do get together and have events and want to connect with everybody that lives in the area. So it's great to know that we're here. We have meetings. They are publicly posted. Devin's the manager for the organization. We have a sign-on table in the back for that as well. So I wanted to point those two things out to hang out afterwards to get to know everybody. And just welcome you here to Geotech. And just for me, for a resident of Denver and for a business owner in the city as well, my hat goes off to both the candidates for really being able to put themselves out there and willing to run to serve, because I think in today's political environment, to be vulnerable, to be exposed, to care enough to make a difference in the city we all live in and care about is just something we should all respect and honor and be grateful for, that people are willing to do this job, because it's not very easy, and to have it be this competitive and to see them do so gracefully is just a testament to the city and everything it's about. So thanks to both of you for leading by example and being here tonight and continuing. I know it's your second debate of the day, and it's just neat to see it. So thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing about more of your vision for the district and the city. So thank you. Thanks, David.
Good evening, I'm Dave Cebedos. I'm the publisher of the GES Gazette. I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. And again, I want to thank Geotech for hosting us. They donated the space for us this evening. As a micro business in the community, we're always incredibly appreciative of the support we receive from other small businesses so we can put on events like tonight. So thank you to them, thank you to all of you, and of course, yes, thank you to the candidates for your 20th debate or so now, probably, throughout the course of this campaign. A few ground rules for the evening. This is not a PBS presidential debate. We're not going to ask you to sit silently for an hour. At the same time, we want to make sure we're respectful of candidates and can get through as many questions as possible. So if you like what you hear, please do feel free to applause, but let's then kind of keep that short so we can move on to the next question. The candidates will have 1 minute to answer most of the questions besides a short lightning round. Candidates have at least 3 rebuttal opportunities for the evening. If they'd like to get a little extra, they'll get 30 seconds more after their opponent has spoken. As we move from category to category, we'll explain, we'll have 4 questions on housing. So you all know, and they know, what to expect that's coming up. So, on that note, we will start with a 1-minute candidate intro, and we'll begin in ballot order. Derek.
Testing, make sure that's on. So thank you, GES Gazette, for hosting this forum. I was born the youngest of 7 to a single mother, raised in the projects in the United States Virgin Islands. I know hunger and housing instability, and how they both impact poor and marginalized communities. I chose a career in financial services so that I can bridge the wealth gap for me, my family, and for my chosen community. I have led nonprofits that have mandated affordable housing, dedicated funding for parks and open space, and are providing access to retirement income for over 900,000 Coloradans. I ask for your vote because Denver faces immense challenges: lack of affordability, lack of access to green space, and increased crime. We also have incredible potential to build a better and more inclusive future. I'll provide real leadership towards progress, not division, by making city government work for everyone in District 9 and not just a privileged few. That's my promise to you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Good evening. Welcome to Swansea. My name is Candy Sedalaka. I'm your current city councilwoman for District 9. I'm a fifth generation native of this community right here. I actually live 2 blocks away in my great-grandmother's house. I'm a first generation high school graduate of Manual High School, and eventually the first and youngest dual degree student or graduate from DU's Graduate School of Social Work. I was raised by a single mom and my grandparents, and we relied heavily on public assistance and city-run programs. Consequently, I became a social worker, a community organizer, and a policy expert. Prior to taking office, I had over 10 years experience developing, analyzing, evaluating, and advocating for policy and working with community at 3 levels of government. I co-founded and founded several critical District 9 serving organizations, including Project Voice, GES Coalition, the Land Trust here in GES, Ditch the Ditch, and East Denver Food Sovereignty Initiative. My commitment, I'm getting that shirt. I'll give it to you later. Thank you.
Yes, for the audience, we do have a timekeeper up here to help keep our candidates on track. They get a 10-second notification and then a red flag when their minute is up. So we'll move on to our first question. We'll begin with Candy. What do you see as the biggest issue facing the GES communities today, and what would you do to address that issue?
It's the same issue facing communities across the city and the nation. It's housing insecurity. As I mentioned in my intro a little bit, I began to work on this long before I came to council, founding the city's only community-led land trust, Miracle that we got here in this neighborhood, when we faced the potential of eminent domain for I-70 expansion. This is an innovation that I pushed the city to invest in, and now our city actually invests in community land trusts. Along with land trusts, I've pressed innovations that we're investing in right across the street and down the alley with safe outdoor spaces, tiny homes, safe parking initiatives, and one of the big ones that I've been advocating for over the last 4 years is master leasing on our way to social housing and adaptive reuse of downtown for housing.
Thank you. Dara.
I think one of the biggest opportunities with Globeville, Larry, and Swansea neighborhoods, once again, is housing. And the communities here know what they need and how to get there. For example, a group of community members in collaboration with GES Coalition and the City and County of Denver, they actually worked collaboratively for over a year and a half to provide a deed restricted housing, 99 years deed restricted for housing tied to incomes of folks that live in this neighborhood. We know that housing tied just to AMI outprices folks in rental communities, or folks who are renting, because year over year, your rent can increase. Within the GES Coalition and with that community benefit agreement that they did along with the city and along with community members throughout the neighborhood, they passed not only deeply affordable, deed restricted housing, but also the opportunity for open space and also connectivity to Sunnyside. That was an innovative, amazing project in the Fox Street neighborhood. That process ended with the council member voted against it.
Thank you. We'll move on to our first topic, housing, which will have 4 questions. And by the way, if either of you would like a question repeated after the other candidate speaks, just let me know. We'll begin with Darryl. Many homeowners are seeing dramatic increases in property taxes this year, on top of rising costs on essentials like groceries. Do you feel the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment was a mistake, and what policies would you support at the city level to help struggling homeowners stay in their homes?
That's a great question, David. I don't think the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment was a mistake. I think the steps that the state legislature is taking right now, I think Senator Chris Hansen and others have come together for a very targeted process. I believe they have an amended bill to address the rising assessments for property values. That can be a short-term process that will make sure that your next property tax bill isn't a 20% increase above last year's, but there's a long-term process that's needed. I have been speaking with state legislators, municipal leaders from across the region on issues on property tax, on issues on housing and housing affordability, because I'm a collaborative leader. It's demonstrated in the endorsements that I've received from 5 sitting city council members supporting my campaign because I have worked collaboratively with folks. What are things we can do right now? Make sure that we increase spending for rent subsidies, make sure that we increase protections for eviction protections for folks living in this neighborhood and throughout the United.
Candy.
I would say that the repeal was probably a mistake, but I think the bigger mistake that we make is at the local level. So our property taxes are a combination of the valuation or assessment times a multiplier. And in Denver, we as city council members have full control over that rate, that multiplier. You have to be paying attention to a whole year of legislation at the local level preceding your tax bill to know what's going on. But in December, City Council undid relief that we got from the state in the last legislative session on property taxes. And they floated our mill, which is increasing our tax rate, which is the multiplier. And I think that's where we have authority and control to deal with our property tax situation, and we've made a mistake there.
Thank you. Candy. The rent control bill at the state legislature failed. What other policies would you support to help renters who are facing rising costs?
Another big mistake that we recently made was passing the expanded housing affordability ordinance with very minimal mandates on developers. We essentially codified the status quo, which has not gotten us very far in solving our housing crisis. And so I think we need to go back and amend EHA to demand more from developers because it is the lack of regulation of development that I think is creating a context that allows developers to exploit our renters in this city. And in the absence of rent control, we have to use our power at the local level to press down on the market because build hasn't gotten us the units we need, because the prices can be anything developers want those prices to be. And so mandating more affordable housing at deeper levels is the best solution we can use until we can have rent control or rent stabilization.
And I'll add, Councilmember Sidibaca has been a council member for 4 years. And throughout this candidate forum, the council member will continuously communicate as far as policies passed within city council that she didn't like, that was a mistake. Let's say the council member has had the opportunity for 4 years to pass affordable housing mandates as she chooses, as she believes is the right process. EHA is a start of a process. EHA within the law, because my board passed that, provides for council on an annual basis to revisit and to make it more affordable for folks. Leadership requires you to lead, not just to complain.
Daryl, according to the National Association of Realtors data from last year, the homeownership rate for whites is 72%. Latino homeownership has risen to 50%, but black homeownership is lower than it was a decade ago, only 43%. While those are national numbers, that is trending across the country. How can we reverse the trend to help more black families become homeowners and encourage the positive trending in the Latino community?
That is a big issue, I think, in this campaign, and I think for the next 4 years. There's been a lot of talk about making sure that folks who are making less than $42,000 a year have actual rental subsidies or rent control, but not a lot of discussion about home ownership. I know when I purchased my house in 1997 in Whittier, it cost $75,000. I had a long-term grant from CHAPA to purchase that down payment and to make sure I could live in that house, and my mom was able to live in my basement, bringing my family out of poverty. We need to look at ways to expand the Deerfield Fund, which is a historic fund created to ensure that we're investing in black and brown communities to buy and own property. We need to expand CHAPA to make sure that CHAPA provides more grants, not loans, to black and brown families so that they can stay in our communities. I think as a council person, you can do all. We can fight for black and brown wealth while protecting rental subsidies for folks who are making less than 30% of the AMI. That's what you're going to hire me to do, and that's the work I plan on doing.
Candy.
I think when we talk about gentrification, it is at the root of that issue is the loss of homeownership. So in these neighborhoods that we're in, we had above average homeownership rates for black and brown people about 10 years ago. And so when we look at those statistics in combination with the average median price of a home right now in Denver and what renters can afford, we know that most renters couldn't even afford to buy a home in Denver if they have the opportunity. And so many of our programs like Metro DPA or any of the other down payment assistance programs designed to get people who were redlined out of neighborhoods back in the neighborhoods, they don't work because people don't qualify for the prices that you have here. And so expanding CHAPA is not an option. That's state and federal money. What we need to be doing is devoting more than 2% of our city's budget to housing, and that's across the spectrum of renters and owners.
Thank you. According to a recent article in Deborite, and I see a few of our friends from Deborite here tonight, 1 in 7 homes in Denver purchased in the last year were purchased by investors. Homes under $500,000 are most likely to be purchased by investors instead of being owner-occupied. What are your thoughts on this trend? If you believe it's a problem, what would you do about it? Begin with Candy.
I think this is a huge problem, and if any of you agree with me, you should definitely be following the money that's invested in each of our campaigns, because developer control of our city is what's gotten us into this predicament, and increasingly those developers are outsiders. In order to disincentivize that outside takeover of our city, I think we have to regulate housing development more. We have to disincentivize the exploitation that developers are basically putting upon us because we have a complete lack of control over housing, and our motto here is build, build, build. And so I think UDAP laws, predatory practice ordinances are one way to start addressing that. But we also have to create resilience in our people here and opportunities for them to be able to be the ones who are capturing the houses, and the city can be that first right of refusal.
And I will add to that, I think the city has a role in purchasing land and housing to make sure that we can keep housing costs down, making sure that we have land trusts through the city, public-private partnerships, to make sure that we have more deed restricted properties throughout the city. I think having investors buying up property is the wrong thing. I think it impacts communities like ours and makes it less affordable. I think the council member alluded to dollars coming into campaigns, and I want to make sure we have a clear point of delineation. Within my campaign, I've received $200 investments from individuals that work for development companies. Kenny Sidabaka is the only candidate that has broken campaign finance laws to receive excessive campaign contributions from developers in the 2019 campaign, and she never listed that information. So donations from developers actually are going to have an impact on policy, and it would have had an impact on Kennedy's policies over the last 4 years.
Thank you. We'll move on to homelessness. We have 3 questions. Begin with Daryl. What is the root cause or causes of Denver's homelessness problems?
I think they're multifaceted, and I'll say one of the first things, David, that causes it is the unaffordability in Denver. My sister died unsheltered. Many of you have heard that story. So this situation is painful to me and my family, and finding solutions for me and my family is important. But we need to make sure with the root cause, we are looking at rental subsidies and making sure that predatory lending, predatory homeowner practices are attacked by the city and county of Denver. As a city council member, we have the ability to do that. We need to make sure that we expand, as I said earlier, protections for folks against evictions. We know in the Green Valley area that there were HOAs that were kicking people out of their homes just for fees for things they didn't know. We have to crack down on some of those practices. We also need to make sure that we're investing in the safety nets, the health safety nets for families across the city. We need to make sure that we're funding Denver Health and other organizations that provide health care for the most needy, to make sure that medical costs doesn't cause people to lose their homes.
Candy.
I think it's really simple. Commodification of housing as a human right and the growing social inequality or wealth and income gap. We have a mismatch in what it costs to obtain housing and what people are paid to do minimum wage full-time jobs. And so, you know, when you look at the statistics and you have nearly half of the unhoused population working full-time minimum wage jobs, it's not a problem of the person, of the individual, it's a problem of the structures. And so, along with social determinants of health and upstream things related to health, we have to face the facts that it's our economic structure that sets up the situation of homelessness, because we make housing unattainable, and it should be a human right.
And David, do you have an opportunity for that?
Yep, you're muted.
So, and I want to add to that, I think the council member uses a lot of terms in some of our responses, but fact, as a leader, as a city council person, you have an opportunity on a regular basis every Monday to vote for affordable housing. To reduce the number or to increase the amount of affordability in the city, you have, as of March, voted against 1,337 affordable units, and that's units at all levels, from 30% below and for folks that are 60% and above. That does nothing to protect working families and allow for people to live in the communities that they choose to. So you are part of that problem, reducing our housing stock and voting against affordability in the city.
As a reminder, your rebuttals are 30 seconds.
Oh, that's in a minute.
Thank you.
The
Candy.
whole minute. In my time on council, I voted on over 6,500 things, and 97% of the time I voted in alignment with my colleagues. I think to vote in 3% of the time against my colleagues or with other colleagues is not a problem, especially when it is to call out predatory development that ends up neutralizing any natural occurring affordability in a neighborhood in exchange for 1 or 2 units. That's a problem. In my time on council, I've supported over 4,000 units of affordable housing.
I'll do one more on this. The council member continues speaking about the 6,000 votes that she's had. Most council people have 6,000 to 7,000 votes. The truth is in the pudding. The majority of the folks in city council that are supporting someone in this race are supporting my campaign. If the council members' collaboration and working collaboratively with folks was so great, why hasn't any other city council member, including those who are no longer in council, supported her campaign? It's not because she is the only way, the truth, and the life. It's because she chooses not to work with the folks that she has to work with in city council.
Your support from past council members is not a reflection of innovation or a future that is better than where we've gotten. You're getting support from people who created this problem.
Amen.
And all of the people who support you on council are no longer coming back, except for one of them. And having failed candidates supporting you is probably not something to be super proud of.
Say it, Kim.
All right, thank you both. And we'll come back to part of that topic actually later.
Nice.
Second question on homelessness, to keep track. This question actually comes from an attendee here tonight. A recent 9 News article this week talks about a small business owner, Don Hines, the owner of Yazoo Barbecue Company, who is worried about his business failing because customers are chased away because of homelessness in the area. Human waste, drug paraphernalia, aggressive handling, and the like. And for our audience, both candidates were given a copy of this article earlier today. How can City Council help Mr. Hines and other small business owners downtown who see a link between rising homelessness and decreasing business? And we begin with Candy.
I'm really glad that Don's story is in the paper because we've been working with Don for several years. In fact, in 2020, when he initially came to our office, his situation along with others in the area catalyzed our fight for safe outdoor spaces, which are designated encampments. That, I think, is one of the reasons we fought so hard for safe outdoor spaces, because if you don't designate a space for people to be and they have to choose where they're going to be where there is the least amount of pedestrian traffic and the least amount of potential police enforcement. Don's business is in a very tough area on Broadway, on Broadway as it turns into Brighton, and there isn't a lot of pedestrian traffic there. And so safe outdoor spaces are one solution for the people in front of his business. For Don, whose issue is property tax increases when his business is not improving, those property tax assessments and consequential appeals are super important, and that tax rate we mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
Yeah, Don's story broke my heart. I met with about 40 business owners in the ballpark neighborhood recently, and they're facing the same situation. Their primary issue is when they contact the council member never responded. The council member actually responded to one of the small business owners that her office will bring Narcan to that small business so that they can provide Narcan. That business owner had someone die in their vehicle that they broke into from an overdose from fentanyl. So once again, the council member says a lot of really nice things, but when you speak with the folks in these communities and small businesses that are supporting my campaign, they're saying once again, the council member does not listen, does not show up. We must first and foremost have a council person willing to listen to community members, fight for community businesses. I funded the Safe Outdoor Spaces. We've doubled the funding for Safe Outdoor Spaces this year, and we'll continue doing that.
would not have to answer. But
How did you fund Safe Outdoor Spaces?
Let me help you with that. So as the chair of the Denver Housing Stability Strategic Advisors Board, we provide a budget or an approval process for a budget for Safe Outdoor Spaces. Safe Outdoor Spaces was not funded at the levels that it was last year. We proposed a budget to double that funding. That funding proposal went to City Council. We had many budget meetings, but you didn't show up. Robin Kanish was at those meetings and spoke on behalf of council.
So you were responsive to my budget amendment that I propose every year.
You didn't have a budget amendment. Your budget amendments were voted down, Kenny Sidabaka. Your budget amendments could not get a second from fellow council members that you proposed, and that was the only time that has ever happened in the history of council. You had 12 budget amendments that was voted down, and you weren't able to even get a second. So no, it wasn't your budget amendment. It was the amendments led by Robin Kanish, who's that we put Robin Kanish, it wasn't your amendment.
all right. Wrap up. Homelessness. We'll begin with Daryl. Could you summarize what short and long-term solutions you see to address Denver's homelessness issues? And do you feel more sanctioned outdoor encampments are part of those solutions?
David, that's an important question. Like I stated, as the chair of the Housing Stability Board, one of the first things I knew when I joined that board, and that board was created by the Denver auditor. The auditor saw that there was not transparency in the way that the city was spending over $250 million to tackle this issue and other housing issues. One of the first things I did as the chair was to focus on making sure we had the right data. To this day, we do not know how many folks are living and dying on streets on an annual basis. There's an average of 300, they say, year over year, but we do not know the exact count of folks that are going on in the streets. So micro level, what we should do, we need to move from a point-in-time count, add from the point-in-time count process that we currently have, to really focus on community solutions of counting every single person that's living on the streets. We need to make sure that we have wraparound services that support whether folks have mental health issues, whether they have substance abuse issues, or whether they're justice impacted. These are the things that are important, along with building transitional and supportive housing with funds from Prop 123. We can do this if we work together as a city council.
I think we need to devote a larger than 2% slice of our budget to housing. We need to amend EHA. We need to supplement the federal AMI model. We need preservation and improved tracking of units. Tax rebate increase. We need to legalize all home forms, including mobile homes, social housing, master leasing, safe outdoor sites, safe parking sites, comprehensive case management for supportive housing, acquire and convert motels and hotels, adaptive reuse of downtown commercial, city vouchers, increase TRUA, and use the registry differently, increase eviction legal defense, have a renter's court, tenant protections, UDAP protections, citywide zoning to add supportive housing to more neighborhoods, replace our zoning code altogether, invest in innovations like land trust, casitas, and prefabricated models, stricter monitoring of ADUs and short-term rentals, divert taxes from short-term rentals to the housing fund, vacancy taxes, luxury taxes, flipping taxes, improving re-entry, and I've worked on all of this in the last 4 years.
Wow.
Thank you. We'll move on to the issue of crime. We'll have 3 questions, and we'll begin with Candy. While gun crimes have actually increased the most in the southwest corner of the city, no area has been spared from violence, including, of course, the tragic incident recently at East High School. What can the city and city council do about gun violence in Denver?
Gun violence is a tough one because access to guns cannot be limited in a meaningful way at the local level. No matter how much we ban things or try to create permits for guns, it's a constitutional right, and we're surrounded by multiple counties who don't feel the same way about guns. And so the primary way that folks are getting guns is stealing them out of cars. And I think that we need to talk about what encourages people to leave guns in cars, what kind of legislation we've passed that plays a role in that. And then how do we deal with all of the reasons that young people are so hopeless and desperate in times like we're in? The mental health, the educational opportunities, the employment opportunities. Those are the things where council has power that we could be leveraging more effectively to lift up the kids and make sure there's not a reason for them to be out there hopeless, desperate, and engaging in gun violence.
Yeah, I thought that was a very nice list that the council member just shared prior to the last question, and none of that got passed by her leadership. So leadership matters. Let's talk about guns. The council member voted against banning those guns. When you have a city council member in the city and county of Denver that sounds more like Lauren Goldberg than she does a progressive in Denver, then you know you have a problem. Voting against those guns, voting against banning concealed carry in parks. Manual High School, 2 blocks from my house, where Candy Sidabaka went to school, is in a park. It's in Fuller Park. We have students and we have families under siege because of the increasing guns. As a leader, it's one thing to say that people are getting access to guns all the way and you can't do anything about it. When you get elected, the ask is for you to lead. To vote against those guns without any explanation is wrong. To vote against concealed carry in public places is wrong. We need leaders that are going to stand up with families and fight for common sense gun control in the city and in the state.
Ken, you said you would like to have another rebuttal. You've used 3, Gary, you've used 2. Are you comfortable with a few more through the evening?
Oh, I'm fine with it.
Fantastic, Kenny.
I think to say that voting no without explanation is a reflection of you not paying attention, because I explained extensively the unintended consequences that I was trying to avoid with both ghost gun legislation and concealed carry. For example, ghost guns. In 2023, you can ban them all you want in the city, but where do you think people are buying them? They're buying them online where we have no control to them. Concealed carry, not a single incident of gun violence has happened and is because of someone who had a concealed carry permit. And when you encourage concealed carry owners to leave their guns in their car, which is the top place gun violence crimes are getting their gun, you create the problem.
Let me be clear, leadership as a city council member on gun control is essential in a progressive city. Once again, if your council member sounds more like Lauren Goldberg, the council member is wrong. And I'll be clear, banning those guns is not something that doesn't have impact. Your leadership, the community, has asked for banning of those guns, and the council member voted against it. The council member voted against having a ban on concealed carry. I've spoken within the black community. I've spoken to gun control supporters. I have police officers and folks who have guns in their homes. None of us have asked for council member Sidabaka's vote against concealed carry.
We can go a little more back and forth on this, and then we'd like to move on. But yes, please.
I think passing policy that is symbolic with no impact is the problem that we're in 2023. Additionally, it doesn't sound like you care that much about the black community to not consider the unintended consequences of changing that concealed carry legislation. Now anybody can say, I think Darrell Watson or that man across the street in my park who is black has a gun on him, is concealed. That justifies cops showing up, guns drawn, whether or not you actually have a gun, and undoes all of the work we've done on the use of force.
Yeah, Councilmember Sidabaka, I'm glad you're showing concern for black community and black men in that response. As a black man, let me say, I care about black people. When the black community has asked for us to meet and debate at New Hope 3 times, and you not only did not show up, you said it was not convenient for you. It's not up for the black community to make debates convenient for you. It's for you to make us a priority. So if you want to say that me standing with my people saying that we have too many guns in our homes, too many of us are dying from gun violence, and you think that is just simply an act of demonstrating posturing, then speak more with the black community, and we will tell you we do not want more guns, and we need our councilperson to protect and fight for gun control.
Well, let's look at the amount of black people dying from police violence.
Let's go there. Is police next?
We do have 2 more questions on crime, actually, including police, so yes. I think we can move on and continue this conversation. Begin with Daryl. Actually, let's jump to a police question. Daryl, what are your thoughts on the Reimagining Police Task Force and report that was first released in 2021?
I think the outcomes from Reimagining Police Force are things that we must implement, and many of them have been. I want to remind folks, I chaired in 1998 the Bias Policing Task Force for the city and county of Denver after I was racially profiled by Denver police officers on 3 different occasions. That process provided first and foremost requirements for body cameras on police officers. It required that they change the Scantrun form, the form that police officers use when they contact individuals. Before, they were not mandated to do it. They had to do that going forward because they were also profiling transgender members around Cheeseman Park and other places, considering them to be prostitutes. We expanded that from the Racial Profiling Task Force to become the Bias Policing Task Force. In conjunction with the Department of Justice suing the state of Colorado Police at the same time, we created a 3-year process that provided clear data with DU students actually pulling data and reporting it in the Rocky Mountain News that existed back then. So yes, support what they're doing, and I did it before.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you support it because I catalyzed it, convened it, and led on it. And it was a result of me introducing the peacekeeping department that my colleagues voted down, yet the report that they produced are all of the objectives that were outlined in my bill. So, thank you.
And I'll respond since we have unfettered rebuttals. The police or peace force that a council member is describing provided absolutely no description once she got rid of the entire police department. Let's be clear, this was not defunding police. This was not providing budget funding to police. This was a removal of Denver police and creating a peace force that did not articulate how that peace force is going to keep my 80-year-old mother in Curtis Park safe when she is walking across the street. The reason why council voted against it, Candy Sidabaka, is because it could not be executed.
One more and then we'll move on. Thank you. Yes.
Again, another reflection that you're not paying attention, there was actually an entire bill written, but because the manager of safety and chief of police would not allow the city attorney to post the link, it was not covered in the media, but it exists in the linked documents in Legistar and articulates every single point of change and replacement that would exist in a peacekeeping department that would do many of the things you say you support, which is expanding alternatives to police incarceration and mental health and substance abuse.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Randy, as a city council member, I'm just going to so quickly, as a council member, you have the opportunity to move 6 other folks to your point. So that's the problem that you keep bringing up, that you bring forward these great initiatives, no one votes on them. You have to be able to demonstrate the skill and the will to get 6 more votes, and you haven't done it, even on this important piece of legislation.
Okay, thank you. The topic of crime did come up frequently when we asked the community for recommendations, for questions this evening, both property crime and violent crime. Besides the issue of gun crime, what aspects of Denver's crime problem do you feel you would dedicate time to solving, and what ideas do you propose? In other words, where is your priority as a council member? We'll begin with Candy.
Aspects of the crime problem. Well, I think one of the big recommendations in the 112 from the Reimagining Policing Task Force is decriminalizing many of the unnecessary ordinances that we have. We were recently able to decriminalize jaywalking, and that was important because everybody loves shared streets in Denver, right? Shared streets actually had to be shut down because you were technically jaywalking if you were utilizing shared streets. And so a lot of our ordinances on the books are antiquated or increase police interaction in a context where it's not necessary. And so decriminalization of those unnecessary things is a way to reduce crime, because if you remove crimes from the books, and we don't have excessive or frivolous citations that indicate higher crime levels than we're actually experiencing.
Thank you. Darrell?
And I think an obvious one, I had a friend that moved to Denver about 4 months ago. We received a job. Someone I knew for many years came and stayed at my house over that period. The second day he was there, his car was stolen. Lucky for him, the first car in our block that ever was stolen happened to be right in front of my house, and it was stolen the second day he was here from California. So I think working collaboratively to make sure that the police department is prioritizing crimes. So if we become the #1 car theft community in the world, we need to make sure that police dollars, the police focus, the police task forces, etc., are focused on that crime. We need to make sure that there's more communication as to ways to mitigate that harm. I think providing dollars for clubs is a good thing, but also looking at who's stealing the cars and dealing with criminal behavior. A lot of folks are stealing cars are dealing with also drug proliferation. So making sure that we're focusing on the issues where crime is increasing, especially in D9 when it comes to car theft, and really dealing with it holistically.
Thank you. Move on to 3 questions that are categorized roughly as development and growth. We asked this question for last debate, but of course there's been an update. Denver voters rejected ballot measure 2.0, the redevelopment of the Parkville Golf Course. The site remains privately owned with a publicly owned conservation easement on it. Lifting that easement still requires a citywide vote. What is the ideal future of the location, and how would you legally reach that goal given the complicated situation? We'll begin with Darrell.
Yeah, it's a complex situation. I'll say first and foremost, the voters were absolutely clear. They didn't come, him, or whatever. Close to 70% voted against development on part of the golf course, and I've said this since the beginning of this election, this beginning of this process. I'll follow the lead and the vote of the people. What can we do to make sure going forward we have a process? Number one, having an active city council member that works and speaks collaboratively with folks on each side. Throughout this drama, I have been meeting with folks who are for and against yes on 2.0, and I will continue to do that. I met as of last week with the Park Hill philosophers, a group of older Park Hill folks who actually are strongly opposing the Park Hill Golf Course development. What can we do within the legal restraints? I collaborated with Joel and Clark to create the dedicated funding for parks. We need to look at how much of that funding can be spent. We need to work collaboratively with the city attorney to look at what are the actual uses that can be used right now with the park becoming a golf course again, golf use.
Thank you. Candy.
I was actually listening to voters the first time, since we voted on this multiple times, and proud to have stood with our close to 70% of voters who issued a mandate to not develop this golf course. Actually, this is a great example of what happens when I don't get my council colleagues to vote on something. I was the person who tried to advance this to the ballot before 301, and my colleagues voted it down because their constituents didn't care about this issue. Community picked it up because we built power in community. They collected signatures, got it on the ballot, and proved that, yes, Candy was right. She was listening to constituents, and indeed, 70% of them did not want it developed. So I would go back to the first proposal that I made on this space, and it would be to utilize eminent domain to take this golf course now that it is blighted. We've had a developer leave it in disarray for the last 3 years, and that is an alternative that is available to us.
Thank you.
And so, to be clear, the blighting of Park Hill Golf Course was a requirement or a step that it caused by a requirement between the developer and the city. So let me break that down. The developer was giving a waiver for continuing maintaining the Park Hill Golf Course as long as this process of whether it was a legal process or the ongoing process of the initiative going through. As of, I think, by the end of this month, they have to begin the process of bringing the golf course back, and that's why that fence was put back up.
Short time. Candy, and then we'll move on.
Blighting the property was neither allowed nor encouraged. The settlement agreement we entered into with the developer allowed them to discontinue complying with the golf course use restriction, and it did not require them to keep it open as a public golf course, but in no place in that settlement agreement did it allow them to kill trees, let the whole property die off, and fall into disrepair.
Thank you. Begin with Candy. What do you see as the best development project to happen in District 9 in recent years, and which was the worst, and why?
Starting with me?
Yes.
Best development project. I would say one that was on its way was Viña until the recent increases in rents for affordable units. It was the best project because we held that developer accountable for several years prior to the development. The initial developer fell through. We found another one and really thought that we were going to get what we asked for. We got the whole first phase of development to be affordable at the most deeply affordable levels. We have control over the commercial space, and we were able to utilize the commercial space for a clinic and community-owned grocery store and a local restaurant that was displaced by the I-70 expansion. Currently, the rent increases are a huge challenge for those tenants. And so I would say they're on their way if we can hold them accountable. The worst development, I would say, is Denarvo Market because of the lack of affordability and meaningful engagement.
Thank you. Daryl.
I'll say the best development is the Fox Street development that I shared with earlier. I think when you look at community benefit agreements and the work that was done over the last 18 months of community working collaboratively with the developer, a developer that actually is worked very well with the community. I thought it was great. It's about $7 million was set aside in community benefit. $7.5 million was set aside. Dollars for rental subsidies and dollars for down payment assistance. That's something that doesn't happen normally, and it was something the developer actually offered. It wasn't a concession they made. They wanted to work with community, and they're continuing to work with community to expand access, like I said, to Sunnyside, provide a park, so many other amenities that they absolutely did not have to do. I know the community supports it, and I'll look to duplicate more communities, more development such as that. I think some of the worst development that we've had is development that's cookie cutter development along Park Avenue that doesn't demonstrate Denver's historic character.
I just want to point out that Fox Park has not yet manifested, and they did engage in a good faith process with community, and I applauded them and also forced that engagement. And did play good cop, bad cop strategy with my community, and did vote against it because they didn't get everything they needed. But that was the leverage we had to get them what they ended up getting. The problem is that they have not yet delivered on their commitments, and we are, as a community, having challenges with that right now.
Thank you. Our last question on development and growth. The GES neighborhoods are considered by many as food deserts, area with little access to fresh foods. What can be done to bring healthy food options to residents? And if your answer is to build a grocery store, how can you ensure a company comes to the area? We'll begin with Daryl.
That's a great question. I think why I laugh is because as I'm considering, CSU Global chose the GES community to be a part of it. When you have the world leader, I would say not even the country's leader, in agricultural education and academics, right in your backyard, it should be an easy layup to work collaboratively with CSU Spur and their ag department to make sure that food scarcity is not only a creation of a grocery store, but actually creation of indoor farming methodology that their students and folks, young people growing up in GES can be a part of. Folks growing up in Global Leaders Swansea can receive scholarships for food scarcity or food ag business work. It just takes an innovative mind, and we have with CSU Spur, and I'll be meeting with them in the next week or so, a desire to work collaboratively with their city council person on these ideas. So being innovative, working collaboratively with CSU Spur long term can target and fight against food scarcity in GES.
Thank you.
I think Daryl's right on point with that answer, and that's exactly what we've been doing. We recognized that relying on an outside grocer was not going to get us a grocery store. I haven't seen one come in my lifetime because they have formulas that drive where they locate themselves, and their formulas are based on return on investment. And in a poor community, there's unlikely to be a high return on investment. And so we went the community-owned route, where we do partner with CSU Spur. I was there yesterday, and we are basically trying to figure out how to, from seed to table, own our entire food production chain and partner with front range farmers to supply our grocers and our producers and produce our food in the kitchens and the locations that are available at the Spur campus. Spur campus doesn't have the capacity to do the full growing that we need. It is a conversation that we've been engaged in for a while, and there is potential for it, but that's where we're at with those negotiations.
Thank you.
I'm scared, but it sounds like we agree.
You like a lot of things.
I think a lot of the back and forth has been really engaging and productive this evening. I do want to do a quick time check. Are you okay if we go slightly past? I know Candace has busy schedules. Great. Fantastic. 2 questions on transportation, beginning with Candy. Given the ongoing design around Washington Street and the ongoing expansion around I-70, what are some ways to better include multimodal transportation in Globeville?
One of the big ones that I think is a model that's being expanded across the city is a win that we got during the I-70 expansion. We forced mitigations from CDOT, and one of the mitigations was a connector. We used to call it the pickle. RTD provided a small bus that we had for the duration of construction, which was kind of a last mile connector through the neighborhood. That model, before it ended, was replicated by the city in Montbello, the Montbello connector. And when it ended here, we implemented one here in GES. And I think that's an important model. I've been fighting to have GES included in the Central Transportation Network, because until I got into office, it was separate and on an island. And so including it in that transportation network means that bike and ped and through streets will be considered as part of the entire Central Transportation Network. Additionally, we need to end the monopoly with last mile scooter providers and bike providers.
Thank you. Daryl.
I support the Montbello and the GES connector. I think it's such a brilliant idea, and it comes through the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. And so really making sure that when we look at multimodal opportunities, we're not simply relying on RTD. Obviously, they have the bureaucratic red tape and steps that they have not been able to be successful on, and really expanding funding for DOTI and in collaboration with CASHER to make sure that we are, whatever multimodal option we provide doesn't increase or impact carbon footprint for folks. I think multimodal transportation also requires that we actually have streets that connect. We know that connectivity and the ideas of how we connect within community is worked out through our community planning process. I think as you look through the District 9, we have, I think, 2 communities that have 2 plans. I think there's an East Area plan that barely touches some of Park Hill, and there's a Swansea plan that barely touches some of Clayton. We need to really have, through a collective process within the City Council office to increase community planning.
Thank you. You both actually kind of answered our second transportation question. So we'll move on to 4 questions about governing and how you would govern in office. We'll begin with Daryl. Denver has a strong mayor system. Do you support the City Council having additional controls and responsibilities? Why or why not? And how would you make any changes?
Yeah, I think our strong mayor system works. I think there's a lot of talk of having a more shared between 13 council members. Can you imagine 13 mayors trying to run the city and actually plan the budget? I think we really need to be careful what we ask for. I think what we currently has work. City council members that actually are engaged within budget process, within policy process, has the ability to work collaboratively with the administration and with the career services folks to get things done. It requires that skill, that will, that social capital to get these things done. The council member said that having the support of current city council members and former city council members, some that she supposed said that lost. Most of the council folks that are supporting me are former council presidents that actually have built a really amazing structure that many of you have chosen to live and stay in Denver and to make it your home. I am honored and proud that I have demonstrated, even before elected, that council members are supporting me, want to support me. They will get me those 6 votes to move things for our district, and I still believe in a strong mayor, and I believe in a collaborative council.
You got a lot of wheels turning. Can you repeat the question so specific?
Yep. Denver has a strong mayor system. Do you support the city council having additional controls and responsibilities? Why or why not? And how would you make those changes?
I absolutely support city council having more authority. For many of the reasons that were highlighted tonight, my opponent mentioned several times that leadership matters and pointed out that of lists and lists of great ideas, it was nearly impossible to get anything done in 4 years. And that is not a function of not being able to lead. That is a function of a strong mayoral system that puts council in a position where they are simply responding to what the mayor puts in front of them, rather taking leadership positions in placing things on their agenda themselves. There's a lot of retribution in a stronger mayoral system. So if you step out of line with what the mayor is doing, you do not get what you need for your district. And so I think that we should be putting a lot of charter changes on the ballot for the voters to decide how they want to split our powers and branches of government more appropriately for checks and balances.
I'll say the way our charter is set up very clearly allows for 9 city council members to override anything the mayor dictates. So if you have a dictatorial mayor that's harassing council members, not listening to them, and not trying to do what they said, get 8 of your council members together. Create the momentum that's necessary. I know that I can. I know that a leader that's collaborative can, and that's why I'm asking for your vote to make sure I can keep the administration in check.
I just want to remind folks, in my first month on council, I was able to get our body to divest from private prison operators in our halfway house system. And that was a landmark move that set off a domino effect across the country, where other cities started to follow us. But the backlash to council members after that single vote from the administration made sure that those council members never, ever again stepped out of line.
Thank you. Candy, do you believe the city should have a more active role with DPS? If so, what and how?
Yes, I do believe that we should be meeting more. A lot of people, as of late, have highlighted a committee that we used to have where city council would meet with DPS board and superintendent. I've actually been asking for that to be reinstated for my entire 4 years on council. And only recently was able to convince our council president to try, and then DPS superintendent blew council off. So I do think we need to reinstate those meetings and that collaborative. I don't believe that a takeover of DPS into city government would be wise. I think a lot of our legislators on city council struggle with our own scope of work and knowing the depth and breadth of things that we vote on, and to also put children's lives in their hands educationally might not be the right move right now.
Thank you. Daryl.
Yeah, I had a really great discussion with former Mayor Federico Pena that endorsed my campaign this week. And he shared really why his administration created the DPS and City Council Collaborative. they understood, and this is 70s to the 80s, they understood that if you as a city council person are creating safety, transportation, and access for families and communities, you have to be in dialogue with the leaders who are creating safety and access to schools for their children. It makes sense. They met on a monthly basis. They worked and listened to each other. They passed legislation that impacted both schools as well as community. And they did that from a place of humility, a place of interest and curiosity. I am asking for your vote because I know when I'm on council, it won't be simply the superintendent of DPS that's going to say, no, we're not going to meet. I am going to work collaboratively like I always do, and we're going to bring city council members and DPS leaders together.
I will preface this next question with, yes, you can both have a rebuttal after, and I'd like to keep it at one and move on. There's been a lot of talk tonight and throughout this election from both campaigns about effectiveness on council, when it's appropriate to dissent from a council majority, and how best to do so. When do you expect to see yourself disagreeing with majority views on council, and how would you approach those times? We'll begin with Daryl.
Yeah, I think it's essential. I think if you're electing me to be the city council member for District 9, you're electing me to fight for the families, businesses, small businesses in District 9. I am going to disagree with the other 13 city council members. But the difference in leadership is when you come to a leadership position from a place of curiosity, as I shared earlier, you have those relationships built. I was able to have 16 former city council members support my campaign, not because I agree with them. Carol Boygan could not disagree with me more on Park Hill Golf Course, but she cannot sing my praises louder because she's known over the 20 years we've been working with each other that I will listen, I will learn. When I am wrong, I'm going to say I am wrong, I will reflect, and I will move forward. So the difference in my leadership style is that yes, we're going to have robust discussions. We have committee meetings to work out all of the kinks before it becomes before council to a 1 to 12 vote. I will ensure that your voices are heard and executed on because I understand what servant leadership means.
It sounds like Daryl would do what I have done, which is 3% of the time I have disagreed with my council members because of my constituents' mandates, and I have stood firmly and unapologetically for their interest in that 3% of my votes. I am not disagreeable. I disagree, but I can assure you that if you go back and watch any of the council meetings where I disagree with my colleagues, I'm disagreeing with facts, with research, with data. And so when they go against me and call me disagreeable simply because I present the facts, I don't think that's a reflection of me. That's a reflection of them not liking what I represent, which is data, which is community, which is justice. And I happen to be the only and the first Democratic Socialist ever elected to Denver City Council. And that came with a target on my back.
Thank you.
That's a pretty I hear what a council member is saying. I want to be clear.
I'm sorry, we could please let Ken speak. Thank you. Sure.
I hear what a council member is saying. But one thing that I think has to be clear, when you refer to your fellow council members as traitors to their people, that's not a fact. That's not a data point. You have council members like Amanda Sandoval, whose entire life and family has been to bring community together, communities that you both have fought to uplift and support. That is not part of data, and I'm saying that is not coming from a place of curiosity. If you disagree with Councilmember Sandoval, disagree with her on the facts, but the name calling and the attacks is why you are ineffective.
Again, sticking to the facts. If you have a historic amount of people of color in leadership on council, and you have a a gerrymandering process that is going on that is led by one of those people of color. And you do everything in your power to call out that we are gerrymandering districts and decreasing political power for Black and brown people, and someone else calls it a traitor and you comment on it. I don't think that is me calling someone names. I'm speaking to the facts.
Thank you, and I'd like to move on from this time. Thank you. There's always a lot of questions about policy, but the other important part of this job, of course, is constituent services. How would you connect with community to keep them informed and receive feedback? What do you feel is effective, and what do you feel is not? And we'll begin with Candy.
I would say this has been one of my top strengths, and some people criticize it because of the many places that I meet people where they are. We've increased the amount of people who watch city council. We've increased public testimony at council. We've increased the ways that people can participate. Every single meeting you can participate in virtually because of a ballot initiative that I advanced. I have over 16 stakeholder groups that meet regularly that have informed every piece of policy that I have carried and co-sponsored, as well as they are leading the agenda for what we're doing outside of council in community to build power. And my constituent services in our office is so good that people from every single district in the city call our office when they can't get what they're looking for in their city council offices. I'm a social worker. We case manage every case that comes in instead of referring them to 311.
David, can you repeat the question?
Sure. We ask a lot of questions about policy, but of course the other important part of this job is constituent services. How would you connect with community to keep them informed and to receive feedback? What do you feel is effective and what do you feel is not?
I think that's the foremost responsibility of a council person, is to be responsive, to be accessible to their constituents and residents of the city and of District 9. Listen to what the council member said and hearing the voices of folks in each of the neighborhoods that I visited. 2 meetings this week, folks that live in the Lincoln Park 1 tower on 20th Avenue. And those neighbors have communicated and had a room of, I think it was close to 48 folks there. They each have shared with me over almost a 3-hour process of the calls after calls after calls that they made to Candy Ciabatta's office, of encampments around their buildings. These are mostly older folks who have retired and moved from the suburbs to downtown. And they, to a person, said they have never heard from the council member. They've invited the council member to come to their building for 4 years. The council member has not visited. I will have a very different process, and I'll add more as we have time.
Two things on that. Engaging with people is very different than giving people the answers they want. And because you may not get an answer that you want, or we may not be able to override the mayor on a certain thing or do the mayor's job, that doesn't mean we're not engaging with people. On the second piece of that, if you were informing your constituents, I would be able to find a whole lot more on social media just about your campaign. If you go and look at your campaign, there's no information about anything. There's no public presence for people who use that method.
And very quickly on that, David, I had the honor of being the candidate of choice from 7,180 voters in the city and county of Denver. Somehow those residents seem to know who I am. And how to get a hold of me and how to vote for me. So I am proud of my outreach. Let me be clear, it is important for a public servant to listen to all folks in the community. Councilmember Ciabatta may sit here and say that she does. I think if you go to any community across District 9, they'll tell you differently.
I wonder how many of those folks were influenced by the negative ad blackmail and propaganda that developers dumped millions of dollars into, because it's certainly not proactive from your campaign in your public presence online.
All right, we have one more full question, a short lightning round, and closing statements, and we'll get you out of here. So, Daryl, we've talked a lot about differences between you two this evening, and of course throughout the course of this campaign. You two could probably give each other stump speeches at this point. You've been in so many joint appearances. Is there a policy or proposal that you've heard from your opponent that you would incorporate into your plans if elected?
Yeah, I want to say clearly, I haven't said to Councilmember Sidibaka, and my family and I are praying for you and your health and your baby, and we're so very happy for you and your family and the life that they're going to have. And they're going to have a wonderful life. I think you're going to be a wonderful mother. I think your process for, my brain just went dead as far as the external process that allows for a community to have votes on specific community-targeted projects in their neighborhoods. Participatory budget process. I will do everything I can to expand that however we can within council. I think it is a fantastic process. I think it brings joy to folks to have a say on small parts of things that are important to them in their community. So I applaud and uplift her for leading that, and I will continue that as the next city council person.
Candy.
Thank you. I think it is less of a policy and more of a process. I've heard several times throughout debates critique of our constituent services and our availability to folks. And so I would love to meet with you to figure out how to troubleshoot whatever gaps there might be in that process and create new processes if we need to make people feel heard, even if they feel like we disagree with them, and get them to a position where they do feel like their council member is doing what she can to get them what they need.
Thank you both. To our lightning round, again, about 10 seconds or just one or two sentences for each of these 4 questions. Beginning with Candy. Are you publicly supporting either candidate for mayor?
I am not.
Derek.
I'm not. I asked them to support me.
What'd they say? What'd they say?
They haven't responded, but I'm going to be persistent.
Daryl, with so many candidates across the city this year, there's been an increased conversation about alternate voting systems. Would you support ranked choice voting or other alternate voting systems for Denver elections?
I will. Ranked choice, especially, want to look at other options, but I think ranked choice is needed. Too expensive our elections.
I would, and have worked with the ballot modernization task force, researching both ranked choice and approval voting.
Great. Candy, do you have a political hero or inspiration?
I do. A lot of them. I would say Frida Kahlo, and also Asada Shakur. Those would be my top 2.
Derek.
And this is going to sound a little bit, but Federico Pena has been one of my heroes. I actually was kind of starstruck as we sat and spoke. He signed the book that he wrote about his life. If you haven't read it, it is an amazing autobiography. And I support him, and he's been my hero because he didn't execute all of the amazing things that he started. Other mayors did, and he was fine with it.
Last lightning round question, Daryl. Which other member of council do you see yourself working with on legislation the most?
I think Councilmember Sandoval and Torres both have fantastic relationships with them and look forward to working with both.
Candy.
Definitely the newly elected Sarah Perry. She's one of the most brilliant individuals I have ever met. Thoughtful, caring, and has a legal background in worker rights. And I think right now our city needs a lot of attention to making the city a place you want to work.
Thank you. All right, under our closing statements, we'll do the reverse order from before. 1 minute each. We'll begin with Candy.
Denver's at a crossroads. We're transitioning out of 12 years under exploitative developer control of our city. We're searching for our soul. I'm indeed a collaborative and effective person, and for that, I'm always under attack. I have the broadest base of support, the most amount of donors, both individual, the most organizational endorsers, and the most diversity across those supporters. My top donors are the workers and people who make the city run. I have over 1,000 individual donations. When we talk about what our city needs, we need leaders with a vision who will plan for our future with an appreciation for our history and an eye on opportunity and stability for everyone in our city. If you want more of what we have had over the past decade, then you couldn't continue to choose the status quo in my opponent here, who's endorsed by the status quo and himself endorses the status quo.
It is not the critic who counts, not the council member who points out where others stumble or where they do our deeds but have done them better. The credit belongs to the leader who's actually in the arena. Their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. The choice in this election is clear. 4 more years of complaints, critiques, personal attacks, and tweets, or 4 new and glorious years of progress, not division. 56% of District 9 voters on April 4th voted for progress, repudiating the lack thereof over the last 4 years. They voted for a leader that admits when they are wrong and one willing to work collaboratively, not to further their ideology, but for the will of the people. The majority of the current Denver City Council members that are supporting a candidate in this race who have sat with Councilmember Sibata for 4 years are endorsing my campaign. 7,180 of D9 voters have supported my campaign. I am asking you to support progress, not division, on June 6th.
Great, and thank you both. Thank you to our audience, and once again, thank you to Geotech for hosting us this evening. Don't forget to get in your ballots. They'll be mailed out soon.
Thank you, David.
And candidates, if you would just stay there real quick, I realized that I couldn't use my camera for live stream and stills, so if I could just get a couple photos of you guys.
Yes.
Should have thought of that earlier.
Shake hands. We go right first. Wait, let me.
Yeah, as soon as I saw Kevin, I was like, oh, right.
Yeah, him guys,